The psyche of an entire nation is shifting. El Salvador regained a national identity. If you think that being early to Bitcoin is important, transfer that to nation-state level.
One of the great opportunities in El Salvador is development arbitrage that will probably only be there for another 5, 6, 7 years. If you're thinking about it, the time was yesterday.
They're happy to see entrepreneurs come here, and they celebrate it, and even to the highest ranks of the administration who will share what you do. There is a massive difference if you live in a country where you feel that you are constantly working against your government versus in a country where you are welcome. And for a nation, it is incredibly destructive if your people don't have optimism. I fear that we are about to see this in the West, in Europe. Do you fight against it? This is one of the reasons why Bukele became so popular. That's how he started his political career. I get from this criticism that I hear, he's too powerful. Let's say in Europe, for example, it's unthinkable that you would have someone with 90% approval rating and that not being faked. Archie.
Lina, the creator of Little HODLer, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you now? Because we all know you, well, many people who do know you as being from Germany, but you are now living where?
In El Salvador. I'm in San Salvador, the capital.
How long have you been there for? And what made you decide to finally go there? Because as Bitcoiners, we're all familiar with the recent sort of transformation, the Bitcoin-led transformation by President Bukele.
Yeah.
But what made you decide to make the leap and relocate, resettle your entire life to El Salvador?
I've been here for almost 2 years now. I first came in August 2023 to visit because I wanted to move to Asia. I spent the majority of the last decade or so in somewhere around Asia. And I wanted to go back there. And so I thought I'd just make a stop at Bitcoin Mecca first. So I just visited for a week. And then I got stuck here. I didn't expect it at all. I just wanted to come say hi. And then I thought, oh my God, it's really great here. And so I changed my plans. And instead I moved here. And now it's been 2 years.
So who did you know there? Did you know anyone at all when you landed?
I knew the president, and I knew one person who now is one of my best friends here. I didn't know her at the time. Actually, she was just a contact. Like I knew her brother, and he gave me her contact, and she took me around the country for a week, which was like incredible hospitality. She had to work, but she took a week off, so we went all over. It's a small country, we went all over. And then I just, from there, I brought my company here. Now we hired locally, and now we're all completely settled here.
It's one thing, Lina, to go to El Salvador and enjoy it, but what triggered you to say, I'm moving here?
One of the first impressions I got is a country full of optimism. And surely it's in part what you said, and in part I think it's intrinsic. Because Salvadorans often tell me that they're very happy people, and they were always a very happy people, and they're known for their smiles. But of course, there's a psychological element to this. I'm from Germany, and Germany has a very high standard of living, but overall a very pessimistic outlook. And you can tell this is in the air, and the opposite is in the air here in El Salvador, where the standard of living is not as high as in Germany objectively, but the trajectory is upward, and it is so steep upward that it takes you, and people see what can happen in a short amount of time, and it motivates them to add their part. And this is a self-reinforcing a thing that makes you want to contribute. It makes you want to be part of it, because you see that the things that you add here, they have staying power, which is something that I don't remember seeing ever in my adult life, at least in Germany or in Europe as a whole. And that is something extremely empowering, because you want to build your existence, you want to invest your time, your energy, your resources, your power into something that has purpose, something that can last. And if a country is able to give you that feeling, to give you the confidence that what you do can stick around, that is actually I think that is a major pull factor. And I think that is a major factor why people come to El Salvador, because that's something that hardly any countries in the world are able to convey to people.
Looking for a secure, trusted way to buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin? Gemini has been leading the way since 2014. Founded by the Winklevoss twins to be a security-first, fully regulated Bitcoin platform. With Gemini, your Bitcoin is protected with enterprise-grade security, backed by insurance and Type 2 certifications for SOC 1 and SOC 2. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or a long-time hodler, Gemini gives you the tools to stack sats and build generational wealth your way. From simple one-tap buys to advanced charts and trading features, it's all here. Buy, sell, and hold securely. That's Gemini. Gemini. Bitcoin with confidence. Need cash without selling your Bitcoin? With DeBiFi, you borrow against your Bitcoin, non-custodial, multi-sig escrow, and you keep your keys. No banks, no selling. Just institutional grade liquidity with terms up to 2 years and APRs as low as 9%. All transactions are signed using private keys on your own device. Using a 3 of 4 multi-sig setup, 3 out of 4 keys must approve every transaction, giving you control, transparency, and peace of mind. Whether you're a hodler, miner, small business, or treasury team, DeBiFi gives you the cash you need now without giving up your Bitcoin upside or triggering a taxable event. Get liquidity, keep exposure, and stay secure. That's DeBiFi. DeBiFi, your Bitcoin, your money. Do you think the rate of change and the direction of change is much more of a compelling factor on a national psyche than relative standard of living?
Yeah, and I think that's just psychology. Because if you see things are getting better, you feel better in general about everything. If things are great, because humans get used to everything, right? We can get used to any sort of situation, whether good or bad. What we notice is the trend. How are things developing? So if you have everything, but you see you are losing things, you will feel worse than if you have less, but you are gaining things.
So you said you've been there for 2 years, and I remember when I visited, I was only there for a week, and I noticed so much construction that was happening. And since we've seen quite a few announcements, but I'm interested in the progress that you've seen, because most people might think 2 years is not a long enough time to see a city or a neighborhood or any kind of infrastructure, national infrastructure, change all that much. But what have you seen in those 2 years that have changed?
Yeah, it's actually crazy. I think around the time that you were there, they built a hospital in 90 days. And I think that for El Salvador, this was kind of a point where people realized how quickly things can happen and that things don't have to take forever. It's one of the ways that El Salvador is sort of showing the world that there's no reason for things to take forever. Since I've been here, and I sometimes joke about this, I go to the downtown a lot, where they have the palace and the big library and like all those things. They've really, really rebuilt everything around there. And every time I go, there's something new. And this is no exaggeration. There's a new park, there's a new building, there's a new garden, there's a new library, there's a new supermarket. They are building at high speed there. They are looking to get investors there. They're looking to get businesses there. The speed at which things are happening makes you wonder why it's possible here, but it's not possible elsewhere. Because this is a country that doesn't have the resources that other, like, way more prosperous countries have, but they can still do it. So it's part of what I said. Like, over here, they're building a stadium. They're building bridges everywhere. It's the infrastructure improvements, or like they're putting the wiring underground, putting a bicycle lane. Like, a lot of things are happening. And this is what I said, like, those are things that maybe in Europe are normal, underground wiring, for example. Here, they weren't the case. So we get something that in Europe was considered, just like a given. But we're really happy about it because we see the trajectory upwards.
Yeah, I get the feeling sometimes that in the UK, at least, before anything can be built or attempted to be built, people have to decide who's going to profit most. Whereas in seeming like in El Salvador and certain other countries that I could easily name, it's it's for the benefit of the nation. Like, surely, yes, we should have high-speed rail. Meanwhile, we're trying to build a single high-speed rail line from the south to the north, and it's, I think, almost triple over budget, and it's like 10 years in the making, still haven't built it. It's nowhere near completion.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where did all that money go? Whereas you look at El Salvador, and something as simple as a hospital, for example, it would take probably 3 years to be built in London, and that would be rather quick. And they've done that in 90 days. Now,
they built it during the pandemic. They had to get ventilators and all that stuff. And you know how it was. You know how hard we were trying to find, I don't know, toilet paper or whatever. So, yeah. It's the difference between having a massive bureaucracy and being able to skip that, honestly. So the question is whether you have the will to do it, and I guess also the common sense and the power to do it.
Now, Bitcoin's been a big part of El Salvador's sort of story of the last 3 or 4 years, especially since they've announced the Bitcoin treasury strategy, and they've been accumulating ever since. What has been your experience of Bitcoin on the ground in El Salvador?
Everybody knows about Bitcoin, which is, I think, a very underrated feat. You ask anybody about Bitcoin, everybody knows it. Bitcoin has been largely destigmatized. Of course, there's some people who think it's kind of fishy, and for almost everybody it's complicated, but that's because it's complicated for almost everybody everywhere. And you can pay for a lot of things with Bitcoin. You can pay your phone bill, Bitcoin. You can pay your electricity with Bitcoin. You can pay at the supermarket with Bitcoin. Can pay at lots and lots of places with Bitcoin. I pay salaries in Bitcoin. So it is, for me, it's part of normal life. You can't use it everywhere, but I wouldn't expect that. And it's come to a point where I said we get used to everything, right? It's come to a point for me where it's just a part of day-to-day life. And for some things we use it, for some things we don't use it. I know people who 100% live on Bitcoin. I know people who really try to do that. That's usually down at the beach. But you can do it.
When you say at the beach, you're talking about El Zonte Beach, or is it somewhere else?
Usually in that corner, yeah.
I'm really curious about what El Zonte looks like now, because 3 years is a long time. And I know there were some construction projects planned when I was there, and I wonder if the apartments are up, are there new hotels or anything? Because when I was there, I stayed in, I think, is it Hotel Pura or something like that?
Pura Surf.
Pura, that's it, Pura Surf. I stayed there, and it was a really lovely place. And the place beside it, I split my stay between the two.
Have you been to Palo Verde?
I'm not sure. I think that's next door to Pura. That's next door, right?
Everything's pretty much next door. In El Zonte, everything's along the beach.
No, I mean literally next door there.
Is it next? I think next door is Garten, but I'm not completely sure. But everything's sort of close to each other. They have a lot of new Airbnbs there. They build a Super Selectos, which is the big supermarket here. So they're really putting some infrastructure down there. New restaurants, new cafes. It's become very homely there.
Yeah, because the last time I went there was some luxury apartments being built. And when I came back, I noticed that the curiosity amongst people in the UK and the United States, they were all interested in the real estate market there. Can people readily buy real estate, or do they need special permission as a non-resident to buy in El Salvador?
You're asking the wrong person. But I know people who have bought, and I've never heard of anybody who complained that it was hard. But I'm not deeply familiar with that process. But I do know that there is a bit of a boom, a bit of a bubble even. So people are very, very interested in buying real estate here right now.
Are you on the path to citizenship there?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not super actively on it right now, but I think there are ways to get it after a few years. There are different ways to get it. There are different programs. I think they're adding new programs. So it is most definitely possible.
I guess, now that you've moved your life there, we know about the Little HODLer, and, you can do the Little HODLer from anywhere, right? But what else are you working on over there? What else has brought you to El Salvador? Because you are working on quite a lot of sort of adoption education programs as well. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We do actually we started a lot of new projects after we got here. And I call that the El Salvador effect. I think that there's a lot of opportunities here if you bring ideas and if you bring the drive to execute them, because you have an open field. Basically, you have like a sandbox. They let you do a lot of things as long as they add value. Shortly after I came here, actually before I came here, I texted Stacy Herbert from the Bitcoin office about ways that I could contribute. She was very helpful, and we met after I arrived, and that's how I got into the educational projects, because she needed someone to make educational content for kids, for the school kids here, the primary schools. And so we converted Little HODLer into a school book series for the primary school children here. So we are making 5 books from grades 2 to 6, and it's called What is Money, and it's financial education. So it's actually the first financial education program for primary schools in the world. Nobody else is doing it for kids at this age. So we teach them about the history of money. We teach them concepts like, what is value? What are my needs? What are my wants? What goes into a budget? How do I make a budget? What goes into a price? Some entrepreneurial stuff even. And of course we talk about Bitcoin because it's part of like, it's just part, like it's done for normal here. So we teach it like that.
How do you do that? Like, do you also add sort of certain virtues within the storytelling, like why savings is good and how to save, and like, you know, like we've always grown up with the saying, you know, saving for a rainy day as such, but do you sort of embed that little phrase into a story so that the kids can understand what happens?
Yeah, pretty much. Because I mean, there's some very simple concepts that are just not taught to. I mean, I never received any financial education in school, and they say that our education system is really good, but why are we not taught about this stuff? So there are some very basic things that you can convey, like spend less than you earn, those sort of things, and we can really easily tie them into cultural elements. We can talk about inflation by looking at the prices of pupusas, for example, which is the Salvadoran, like one of the Salvadoran national dishes. There are things that are very easy to understand if you just open the conversation, and kids understand a lot if you allow them to tackle the subject. So we can even explain things like the custodian effect, which is something you would think is very complex, but actually it's not, because it's very easy for someone in El Salvador to understand, because El Salvador sits at the bottom of it. So we are able to help the kids understand what their money is, why a dollar bill has value, but a piece of paper that you write $1 on doesn't have value. Those are things that I think are very important to understand, so you understand where your money comes from and what you do with it and how you can best work around it, because this is a system that, of course, you and I know this, that over time will make you poorer if you don't know how to protect yourself. And I'm pretty sure it's the reason why most countries don't teach this stuff. And the fact that El Salvador as a nation says, okay, we're going to educate our people on this so that they can take responsibility for themselves and be financially independent, financially self-sufficient, I think that says a lot.
So we visited a school when I was holidaying there, and you know, we all gave a little bit of a spiel about Bitcoin, and I was just stunned at how attentive and really interested that the students were. And when we got them to take out their mobile phones, you know, as poor as they were, they all had mobile phones and download a wallet, and they could we gave them a bit of Bitcoin. We gave them $5 each, and they were absolutely like in raptures just watching this value go across from one phone to the other. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by this education program, because I wonder if is there a possibility to animate that, or is it just in book form? What have you created, and will it be available in other languages for people to access?
Yeah, so we made books for now, and we're translating it to English first. So it's open source. We're going to have it all online. Anybody can use it, and anybody can teach it. Anybody can translate it to. And we're going to teach it in schools. they're already teaching it in schools right now. And then from there, it's very easy to adapt. I mean, yeah, you can animate it. You also have to consider, how does education develop from here, right? We are using books right now, but are you going to be using books in schools in the future? So we're thinking about how to adapt this for more future-oriented programs, which might not be using books. They might be using other tools, other methods. But at the end of the day, the content, it's more important the content that you teach than the medium via which it is taught, right?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that you've even put that together, to be honest, because a lot of people are looking for ways to embed some of these messages around financial responsibility and just knowledge around money. But, when we say that, you're like, well, how's a kid going to pay attention to these sorts of concepts? But, you've broken it down into easily understandable stories with lessons embedded in each. So, and also with an absolutely adorable little hodler as well. So can you tell us the story behind that? Because I think it's wonderful that you've done that. And I think it's about 3 years old, maybe a little bit more?
The Little HODLer is like 5 years old now.
Is it? Okay, yeah. So I've been in this space just on almost 5 years. Yeah. And I probably didn't notice it immediately when I came in this space, but it did quickly catch my attention. Yeah. So how did you come to develop that? Because I think it's an adorable little, I don't know what you call it. Is it like a toy, a figurine, a character?
For me, it started as a hobby thing on the side, because I've been on Twitter since 2019, I think, something like that. And I was always sort of struggling with how to best use it. I remember that I was trying to get into Bitcoin Twitter. I was trying to figure out my style of tweeting. And I just did a comic as for fun one night. It was during the pandemic. Yeah. And I was sitting in quarantine. I made a comic, and it went viral for my standards at the time. And I thought oh my God, why people are really enjoying this. So that was a one-off. A couple months later, I made another one, and it was the same thing. And then I thought, okay, maybe I should actually sit down and consider whether I can come up with some concepts. For me, it was completely I didn't think that I could come up with any more ideas. But the thing is that once you start something, once you put your mind to it, actually it starts working. You get into the mood, then you come into the mode, and you come up with ideas. So I started making comics every couple days, and it became really popular. So I turned the character into a plushie, because why not? So that also became popular, which is something where if I had thought about it like with a business mind, I would not have done it. It would have been the business idea sounded really stupid, because Bitcoin is such a Bitcoin is a very male dominated space.
Highly, yeah. 95% of our audience is unfortunately men.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
And so what would grown men who are into tech and finance do with a plushie? But the thing is, they have families, and the thing is,
they have daughters,
and they
nieces.
also yeah. And it turns out men also like plushies. So it was it became something unexpectedly popular. And we did a collaboration with Bitcoin Magazine for their conference in Miami. And we did the first sort of large scale order for me at the time, and it all sold out. It was really, really popular. So that's how that came into being. So it looks like a character for kids, but the stories were always more, not more geared towards adults, but it's something that adults can understand and kids can enjoy it. And some of the concepts, they are very adult focused. Some of the concepts are very easy to understand also for kids. So it covers a broad age range. I guess there was something that we didn't have in the space at the time. Now there's more. But so I think it served a need that I didn't even consider existed. And so that's how that happened. And of course, then when I came here and they said we need something for kids, then of course it's very easy to adapt this just straight up for children, because it actually looks like a character for kids.
When you say kids, are we talking under 5, under 6, under 7? So what age group are we talking about?
For this project, 7 to 13.
7 to 13. Okay. And so like, how does that fit in with a national curriculum, and what's the sort of scale of ambition for how many students are going to go through this program?
So the plan is to roll it out nationwide. The way that it works is that, you make the books and then you pilot it. So right now 50 schools are piloting this. So we're going to go through a review. And after that, the plan is to roll it out nationwide. It's currently part of the social sciences. So it's not its own, like there's not a finance subject as school, but they included, I think, a weekly lesson. It depends on how they want to implement it. And then, that's how they're going to add it in. And I'm not sure how many kids are going to do it in the end. I have to look it up. But yeah, nationwide means all the kids. So it's going to be a course. Basically, you start in 2nd grade, you end at 6th grade. And after 6th grade, the Bitcoin diploma takes over, which already exists, which is more for the older kids. It goes more into technical stuff on Bitcoin. But our series is it was very important to me to make it not only about Bitcoin, because if we start off with, your first lesson is what is Bitcoin, you lack like 6,000 years of history there, which is very important, because I can tell you Bitcoin is this and that, or I can show you why it came into being and why it makes sense that it exists. And if you find the answers to questions and the solutions to problems yourself, I think that you are more likely to internalize them and to remember them and to understand them. And that's what we want to do with the kids. Because I think it's important that you teach kids not how to copy something from a book, not how to echo something that they read, which is very common in many education systems around the world, that kids are taught to repeat after the teacher. But instead, we want to teach them how to teach themselves. We want to teach them the mindset to think critically, to find solutions, to find answers to questions, so that then you remember what you learned.
Is this part of a broader sort of transformation of the education system to, like, I guess, influence the psyche of the nation? Because, perhaps something a lot of people don't know, but El Salvador wasn't that far in the recent past that it sort of had quite a brutal civil war.
Yeah.
And so when I was there, I noticed, in a lot of shops, there are still remnants of that era where there'll be guards hanging around with, shotguns or other types of arms. And it's a little bit jarring for someone who's from Australia and currently living in London, where we just don't see guns like that unless you're in a sort of hugely public place, and you might see the odd policeman or someone from the military, but it's rare. It's really quite rare that you'd see that. And so, like, how does this? Can you tell us a little bit more about the broader program to shift the national psyche to one that's more sort of aspirational, looking to the future rather than traumatized by the past?
Yeah, this is a whole big, long project, actually, and it's something that if you haven't been to the region and you haven't seen the sort of different lifestyles, then it's probably hard to understand. I had spent time in Asia and Southeast Asia before, so for me it wasn't as jarring to see people with guns and guards with like security with the big I'm not good with the terminology, but with
gun.
long
Gun.
With a gun. But I know that it's weird, especially like something that for especially Westerners is not something that we're used to. I think that Bukele once gave an interview somewhere where he spoke about this specific thing that he knows, but that was years ago, that he knew that this is not normal for people from the West to see. But in El Salvador, it is normal, and he wishes it wasn't normal. But this is the way that they had to enforce security to start, and it takes time to slowly, slowly phase that out. And I can tell you now, because I also remember when I first came here, I saw more of that, and I see less of that now. And also, there are some, like, I remember there's I visited an area, like a residential area, where they used to have the, like, the bars in front of the windows because it was necessary, and they actually unmounted them and they turned them into fencing for a garden, for a vegetable garden, which is a very nice one example of how things are shifting here. You have less and less of that. You have less walls. New buildings don't need these massive fences with barbed wire and CCTV and whatnot. It's just not necessary anymore. This is a slow process. Actually, not a slow process, but it is a process. And it is part of what you say, the psyche of an entire nation is shifting because, and it's another thing that we maybe aren't too familiar with as Westerners. So Bukele, before he was president, he was mayor of the capital, and before he was mayor of the capital, he was mayor of a small town just south of the capital. That's how he started his political career. And when he ran for mayor, he ran on part of his campaign and part of his slogans was that he wanted the locals to allow themselves to think bigger and to allow themselves to set goals for the future, to have dreams, which is something for us is very normal. We think oh, what am I going to do 5-10 years from now? How do I build my future? When am I going to buy a house? Well, maybe not, buying a house is not normal anymore. But here, when he came to the locals with those lines, they were looking at him weird. They're like, what are you talking about? Because they didn't think this was an option. They didn't think they deserved it. I cannot remember the amount of times that Salvadorans told me, we didn't think we deserved good things. They didn't think they deserved the kind of life that they saw maybe in the US, that they saw in Europe, because they had been conditioned for decades, you said, with the war, with everything that came after, with the conditions under which they lived, with the governments that they had. They didn't think that they deserved the kind of life, the kind of luxury, the kind of privilege that they saw elsewhere. They had to be shown that it was possible. This is one of the reasons why Bukele became so popular, is because he showed them that they could have nice things, basically. And this is something that if it's so ingrained in the national psyche that you are not allowed to be proud of your country, you don't really have a national identity. The only way that the world knows you is for gang crime, for violence, for corruption, for being the world murder capital. Of course, that affects your mind, your mindset. And for a nation, it is incredibly destructive if your people don't have optimism. I fear that we are about to see this in the West, in Europe, and I hope not, but I like the trajectory is very clear. You have to give your people the opportunity and the room and the courage to dream towards the future, because they build the future that you envision. You as the leader of the country, you can think up anything, but if your people aren't pulling on the same string, then you're going to stand alone at the end. So with all of this is to say, you can tell that there is a broad ongoing process of giving people this confidence, because aside from fixing security here, which is what El Salvador is very, very famous for, over the last couple of years, El Salvador regained a national identity. It became not the country of gangs, but the country of surf. They have the surf championships here. El Salvador is one of the 3 best places in the world for surfing, actually. The land of volcanoes, the land of coffee, the land of financial independence. They really pushed these narratives, and Salvadorans are proud now because Salvadorans see the rest of the world go, wow, I wish I had that, I wish I had this kind of leadership. I wish I had this kind of optimism in my country. This is very, very powerful. Now they're teaching the kids, some basic common decency sort of things. And for us, for our little project, in our small part, we of course want to add to that. We want to fit into that. And I think it's a very, very nice thing that we can help put kids on that path of self-reliance, of independence, of self-sufficiency, and financial literacy is part of that, because it makes you independent.
You mentioned some other things that I guess you're trying to teach kids to, uplift the civilization. You alluded to that. Can you sort of expand on that a little bit more?
In very simple terms, it sounds very lame, but the kids are the future. and you have to focus on them and on their development and on the things that they are able to do in order to have any future at all. This kind of forward thinking, you need it. You need to have this long-term thinking to have any sort of future for your country. This long-term thinking is something that I miss dearly. I always bash Europe, but it's really sad because I feel a lot of common sense is missing from European leadership, which are, you could say, some of it is, inherent flaws of the way that the way that our countries are governed, is that the time horizon shrinks. So you have politicians who think no further than the next election, and that is destructive. And here you have long-term thinking. You know that everybody always talks about the children, but what do they do? So here you have things that are actually happening right now. El Salvador is actually really gearing up for educational reform. So the part of that is, of course, the content of the education system. They have some very, very old school books here, which is common around the world, I guess. But here you can really tell. But the other part is, as you said as well, that psyche, and the other part is teaching, some sort of, I don't want to say teach manners, but there is a way that you move through society to uphold the norms of society, and you have to teach that to children so they internalize it. And
you mean like etiquette and decorum, those sorts of things? For
example, yeah. Right now they have a campaign here where they teach kids to say buenos dias, gracias, por favor. So these are like basic things, right? But if you see it over and over, they even have street signs. It's a very high-profile campaign because these are things that the kids weren't taught before. Like the schoolyards were basically hiring grounds for the gangs. They were recruiting kids outside the school. And El Salvador is not El Salvador is not Europe, so they have to really make an effort to put the kids on the right path so that there's no risk of relapse here, and you really see this effort, and it's really, really important.
Well, I think they're starting from a really good base because in their hearts are big and open. That I really felt that. It's not something that I said simply, to curry favor with anybody or anything like that. The moment I returned, I think I did 3 spaces within a couple of months just on El Salvador. And my enthusiasm was overflowing because I was just overwhelmed with how much of a good time I had, the hospitality that I was shown there, and unbelievably, like, they're really grateful for you to be visiting their country. Like, they're really happy to have you there. They're so humble. It's just a natural thing that I encountered. Nobody was trying to be that way. That's just how they were. Mm-hmm. Nothing was too much. They just wanted to show us. And so we had a guy who took us up onto the volcano, and I forget his name. But on the way back, we stopped over at this roadside seafood place, and just having a chat with him and what his life is like, and what his work is like, because he I think he's also a coffee grower, and maybe he does some geology on the side or something, and he was just incredible to just talk to and just understand where this country has come from and how quickly in the space of 3 or 4 years it's made huge strides.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, do my best to convey that to people who were thinking of going there. And I'm really happy to say that at least one of my Twitter friends did go, and he wrote a fantastic review of his experience there, which was very widely distributed. So this is a MacroScope 17, who is a veteran on Wall Street, shall we say. And when obviously he'd listened to my spaces and some of my posts, and he was thinking about going there. Like a lot of people, didn't really know much about El Salvador at all, other than what you could presumably have read from the media and such.
None of which
And he was
believe.
Yeah, and so he'd read my posts and he'd listened to my spaces and my testimony of my experience there, and he went there and he was completely blown away. I think it's safe to say he's very much in love with El Salvador and its aspirations, and he was just as taken by this small country getting off its knees with its best efforts, and he similarly feels almost like an obligation to help them achieve their aspirations. And so that first report that he wrote upon his return from his first trip from El Salvador, I think it got 1.5 million impressions. And you've got to understand, like, most of his followers are basically Wall Street investment types, reporters, very sort of connected people in the finance space. So I'm hoping that generated quite a lot of buzz. I don't imagine if the Wall Street Journal wrote a glowing piece, it would have received more distribution than that, because
I don't imagine
I was
it would write
surprised.
one, but yeah.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't have had the gravitas either.
That's incredible.
So you just never know, so you just never know who you're going to influence and who they're going to influence, and so every little bit helps. And I was really happy to see that break out of the Bitcoin Twitter bubble as well, because that's one of the main things. It's all very well for us to be enthused by it, but I was very happy to see that.
Yeah. I read that report. It was really, really good. I know he also read some additional ones. I think he also came back. I'm not sure, but
yeah, he's been 3 times.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So, yeah.
He can't stop going there. he really enjoyed it. He was, a bit apprehensive at first because it's very much outside of his sort of, usual holiday destination. He wasn't sure what to expect with all the perceptions of El Salvador. And then when he went there, he was just blown away by the hospitality. He loved the work ethic of people there, wanting to get things done. Visually, just between his first and second trips, he noted how much progress has been made. So, like, if you're watching this, I know it's really easy to be critical of El Salvador for not meeting, some lofty expectations about what Bitcoin adoption might look like. But I've seen it with my own eyes, what the vibe is on the ground, and we have many, many very credible reports corroborating that sort of progress. But what MacroScope 17 has done over 3 visits to that country is actually testify to its progress. This is a guy with an investment background. He's not there to bullshit anybody, and he's got no connections or vested interests. He's not trying to talk his book. He just went there, he saw what was on the ground, and came back just overflowing with enthusiasm for this country and what it's trying to do. And it's one of the reasons why I'll happily talk about El Salvador anytime, to be honest, because this country is, in such a short space of time, they've got off their knees, and now they've got a chance to get up on their feet and start taking strides as well. Lina, is there anything else you wanted to mention? Because I'm conscious of wanting to make sure that we don't miss anything, because one of the things I wanted to make sure we understand is that it's not just a Bitcoin project. It's a vast cultural transformation. These things are hard enough to do when you're just in one company, one small company. But when, I don't know what's the population, is it 7 million, 8 million?
I think about 6 million here, and then there's 3 million more overseas.
Yeah, so it's incredibly difficult when you're trying to transform the psyche of a whole nation. And I think they started really well with the Little HODLer as the sort of signpost for this Bitcoin education. So I wanted to throw it open to you. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover?
When the focus is very much on Bitcoin, you tend to miss out on the greater picture, because Bitcoin is not, as we say, El Salvador's Bitcoin country, right? But El Salvador's not only Bitcoin country. For me, actually, the reason I came here was never Bitcoin. The reason is that I have never seen a country like this. You just summarized it really, really well. If you think that being early to Bitcoin is important. If you think that Bitcoin has a long ways to go and a lot of potential moving forward, and we always say it's still early, it's still early, it's still early, transfer that to nation state level. So Bitcoin is your financial liberation, but you got to live somewhere, And I know I'm saying this as someone who has traveled a lot and has lived in different countries and who never had much problem changing locations. And I know that this is not normal. Actually, we talked about it briefly before we started recording, right? But the location where you live, I think, is very, very important and increasingly important today because a lot of things are changing in the world. And a lot of places that we once thought were stable don't seem so stable anymore. And these changes are accelerating. And I know many, many people are worried. I know many people in Germany are worried. And Germany is historically for me, in my history, one of the countries with the most settled, most comfortable, most tolerant, most trusting people. We always thought we are safe from any sort of crisis, and we are seeing that this is not the case. So it is worth considering where you build your life. And I'm not saying come to El Salvador and do it there, but I'm saying that there is a massive difference if you live in a country where you feel that you are constantly working against your government versus in a country where you are welcome and where what you do has staying power. And this is, I think, the major, what compels people to come here. And for El Salvador, this is a symbiosis, right? I was talking with Katie yesterday, Katie the Russian. She's currently in
the passport. Yeah. Passport woman, right?
Yeah, passport girl. Okay. Yeah. She's in a Zonte for, I think, a month or so. I'm not sure. And of course, her focus is migration and those kinds of things. People who come to El Salvador, they don't come because they expect the high life. They don't expect privilege and luxury and whatnot to be handed to them on a silver platter. There are other countries that you can go for that if you want to retire somewhere super comfortable where you have everything at the push of a button. El Salvador has a lot of work needs to be done here, but you can actually do that work. You actually have the opportunity to contribute. And personally, I always felt that I want to add my efforts, my resources, my time, somewhere that I feel it makes sense, somewhere that I feel that it actually is welcome. And I think one of the reasons why I think that the UK has a major issue with brain drain right now, those who can afford it leave, because, you're being taxed into oblivion and whatnot. And I think that we're going to see, to some extent, countries begin to compete for talent. Smart countries compete for talent. A lot of Southeast Asian countries actually compete for talent. El Salvador also competes for talent. And I think, how you said MacroScope 17 feels he has an obligation to help El Salvador. I feel something similar. So with whatever I can add, however little that is, I feel that I should add it somewhere that it's welcome, rather than somewhere that I feel I'm building on a sinking ship. And sometimes people criticize me that I'm being so harsh with Europe especially. But you have to see what is happening. You have to see this willful self-destruction, I'm sorry. And you have to then decide, what do? Do you fight against it, which is a very worthy cause? Do you take yourself and maybe your loved ones somewhere safer, somewhere better, which is also a worthy course? Or do you, close your eyes and hope that it gets better, which I don't know if that's a worthy course. And so I think that El Salvador is a unique example in our time. I don't know of any other country that has this sort of trajectory, this sort of potential, sort of understanding and readiness for the future. And I think that these things, they deserve your attention and your effort.
Yeah. I want to say, if you're an entrepreneur, you're watching this, or you're even looking for business opportunities, one of the great opportunities in El Salvador is development arbitrage. So if you're from a developed economy, you already kind of know the direction in which El Salvador is going. You can spot the trends, the consumer trends at the very least, right? Let alone for tourism to facilitate that. You already know the direction in which it's going to go there. But right now, El Salvador is not attracting all the capital required to fulfill all of the opportunities. But you can do that. And we're talking something as small as if you think you can operate a world-class coffee operation or a coffee shop or a restaurant or a burger chain, for example. I'm not saying none of those things exist there, but the gap in the market is not, the industries are not saturated like they are in developed economies. Like London does not need another burger chain. It does not need another specialty coffee shop. But, El Salvador's not saturated there. It's certainly not saturated for tourism services. It's certainly not saturated for all sorts of other industries either, if you've got some kind of expertise to bring to the table. So that sort of development arbitrage, in the same way that once you understand Bitcoin and you understand the direction it's going in, you're not really bothered by 5, 10, 50, 60% dips, which are temporary, because you understand what the medium-term trajectory is. And if you have faith in what El Salvador is doing as a country, you also see that same medium to long-term trajectory that you can make a bet on. And having said that, like, I'm not moving there, but if you are thinking of moving, that's something to consider, is that development arbitrage that will probably only be there for another 5, 6, 7 years, where you may, just as a regular entrepreneur, have that advantage. Beyond that, you're probably going to need some other advantage, like access to capital or economies of scale or something like that. Because once it becomes obvious, that opportunity gets competed away. And so if you're thinking about it, the time was yesterday, but there's still a chance to get in there and help build the country with your business ideas, just like Lina has done, for example. I just wanted to put that out there, because a lot of people think about it in terms of the easily accessible thing is, and what everybody can relate to is, tell me about real estate opportunities. And there are people there who can certainly help you. But if you're also looking to establish businesses, there are definitely opportunities there. It's not a saturated market. It's a growing economy. The tourism sector is growing like crazy. And so it's only going to gain more and more prominence as capital flows in and they develop to their potential as well.
Yeah, and this is really, really true, because I see opportunities left, right, and center, and I can only do so much. All of us can only do so much. If I had infinite time, I would have infinite ideas. One of my colleagues, one of my friends, actually the one that I told you about that took me around the country, she's a pole dancer. She does pole dancing for sports. And there are 2 pole studios in this country serving the entire market. She took over one of them, and it is a massive growth potential. There's huge interest. She also did like a yoga certification. So there's like things that you want. If you have a hobby and a passion or something, you want to turn it into a job, you will feel, I think, a lot more gratification in doing it here than you might in a more saturated market. If you want to open a Thai restaurant, I don't know. There's no Thai restaurant. I think I know. They just opened a Thai. I love Thai food. Like, I really. So they just opened a Thai bubble tea store in the downtown. Which, if you did that, let's say in London, nobody would care. Here, it was a huge thing. Like, they accept Bitcoin as well. It is a huge deal. You have an additional sort of, and it plays into this optimism that you talked about. Is when they just opened an H&M here. It was also a big deal. First H&M in the country. That people are very happy to see the progress. They're happy to see the big brands come here. They're happy to see entrepreneurs come here, and they celebrate it, and it goes on social media. You have this, of course, in El Salvador, like, a lot of things run a bit differently. So you have very easy access even to the highest ranks of the administration, who will share what you do. I just saw the other day somebody say, in El Salvador, post what you do, post it on social media, because the president is like chronically online. There's a chance that he's going to retweet you, and then you get a lot of footfall, a lot of traffic.
I can confirm. Yes, he does. He's constantly online, and he's very active as well. Yeah.
Yes. And this is, I mean, it's 100% safe to say that this is thanks to him. This is thanks to his work. And I get from, this is, criticism that I hear from Western countries mostly, is that they think that he is too he's too powerful. He controls too much. But you have to understand that in El Salvador, people know that the effects that they have, everything that the progress that they see is thanks to him. He is not powerful because he seized power. He's powerful because his people vested this power in him. They trusted him with it. He's been a politician for almost 15 years. And he worked his way up, mayor of small town, mayor of capital, president of the country. And if you're familiar with like the things that he did, you will see that the trust that the people place in him is not random. This is a very well thought out trust that they put in him, because he has consistently delivered, and you can tell. And I think this is what people often find interesting about him, because they people tend to listen to him and think like, oh, it doesn't sound like he's bullshitting me like most other politicians. It's because he doesn't talk like a politician. He just says the things that he thinks, the way he thinks them, and then he does them. And we find this really, for us, for us, let's say in Europe, for example, it's unthinkable that you would have someone with 90% approval rating, and that not being faked, but you can actually verify this. Even opposition polls, they put him at the same rating, because our leaders have what 20% approval, and then they think they have a mandate in a democratic society, and they think they have a right to lecture this other country that is objectively doing very well on its own and not bothering anybody, by the way, just doing its own thing.
A lot of people watching this, perhaps the women watching this, will be thinking about their safety in El Salvador, given its history and the perceptions that a lot of people have. Now, tell us, as someone, a blonde girl from Germany and El Salvador, tell us about your experience with feeling safe or unsafe, or any experiences that you've had, and so that people can understand a lot better how they will get about the streets and how they will feel.
It's one of the safest countries I've ever seen. And my measure, or one of my measures, is, can I walk around without looking over my shoulder? We do this. So for women, I think it's very normal that we walk around and we always sort of use our peripheral vision to scan for potential dangers. We have a hand on our bag, and we don't put the phone in the back pocket. Well, that's anybody. That's a good advice for anybody, right? In El Salvador, it is so safe that you do not need to do that. You are safe in the daytime, and you are safe at night, and you are safe anywhere. The only thing I'm scared of here is the stray dogs, to be honest. And I can compare it, and I'm not kidding. I can compare it to Japan. I can compare it to Singapore. It is extremely, extremely safe. You can leave your stuff on the table at a cafe and go to the bathroom and come back, and it's still gonna be there. And it is incredible that, and I think there's a mutual respect here for this new one trust, because trust was not something that the people had in each other and in their system, because even law enforcement couldn't be trusted when this country was under control of the gangs. They infiltrated police, they infiltrated the military, so they would either extort the officers who have family and whatnot. They would threaten them, or they would bribe them. The same with the judges, to a point at which, when there were controllers on the street and you saw people in uniform, there was a chance those were gang members. So imagine that the people who are supposed to protect you, you cannot trust them. That completely undermines the way society functions. Now that they have this security, this trust in each other, and actually being a soldier right now, it is a sort of form of pride. When they do the campaign, the parades here, or last year on Independence Day, the president had a big speech in front of the army, and I, again, from the media in the West, I saw the comments like, "Oh, that's what dictators do." No, you have to understand this is really important for the Salvadoran people to see the honor in protecting the country. It builds this trust in the system. And so I think that people feel motivated to protect that, to preserve that. And so you have a new one, high trust society. Again, different trajectory from what I see in the rest of the world, where we have, I don't know, artificially imposed low trust societies, which is really, really sad to see because it's not necessary. So it's sort of the opposite direction here. Yeah, long story short.
I remember reading MacroScope's reports, one of his reports when he came back, and he made a particular note about, I guess, the police in San Salvador. And he said they're very quick to make sure there's no kind of unruly behavior, or if there is someone who's causing a disturbance. And he said, this is not a place you want to be a criminal.
Yeah.
And I just want to corroborate your experience. I was there for 7 days. I did not have a single moment of even hesitation. You work now. I want to talk about. I love coffee, right? And this is kind of a shill, but it's not really a shill, right? I'm not paid to do this. I really do love coffee, and you guys have been generous enough to send me a couple of batches of coffee that I have absolutely loved. And every time I go to a specialty coffee shop, I'm actually looking out to see if they've got beans from El Salvador. Now, you do a little bit of work in the coffee industry in El Salvador, right?
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that?
And I got it here earlier because we do, and we sent you one of these, right?
You did, yeah.
We do. This is the coffee brand of the president. He has a coffee brand because why not? It looks really fancy, right? So that's actually the whole idea behind it. He launched it a little over a year ago, and we do he asked us to do like the marketing of it, the public facing stuff. It's been a very, very nice project for him. It's like a passion project because he's a president, he has stuff to do, right? But he at one point he said his team told him he needs a hobby, and so he said, okay, I want to make coffee. She really likes coffee, land of coffee. So basically he made the project to it's a very high quality, like El Salvador is one of the world's coffee nations. It's like one of the smallest ones, but it has, because it's on the Pacific Ring of Fire, and the best coffee in the world grows on this ring because of the volcanic soil. It's very nutrient rich, blah blah blah. But El Salvador's share in the global coffee market is super small because, of course, there was a war and then there was peace, but in the peacetime more people died than during the war. So at that point you cannot really focus on building your economy. And coffee is the biggest export, but still it had such a small share in the world's market that, long story short, sort of he made the coffee brand, and we exported to the US. We only sell it on the US market right now, to also push his the image, the new image of El Salvador to the world, because as I said before, El Salvadorans weren't used to being proud and to these sort of quality things. I remember even like my team who are like Salvadorans, they're like, wow, I didn't know we can make such nice high quality premium products and send them to the world. So I think that in this you can really see Bukele's signature, because and this is the way that he runs his country as well, is he pays a lot of attention to these kinds of things, the way the country looks on the world stage, because he knows how important it is. He knows how important it is to instill pride in the people, to have a national identity, to put them together. I mean, the coffee is just it's just the coffee, right? The coffee is not like a push for national pride or whatever, but it's like it's a little way that shows the way that he does his work. The coffee is really good.
You don't have to tell me. I've had plenty of it. It really is good. I mean, I'll just give you a little bit of feedback if you're watching this. I don't like light roasted coffees at all, right? This is a little bit darker. You get a little bit of more of a traditional taste. So if you like, traditional taste of coffee rather than sort of light, acidic, sort of fruity, I like this style of coffee. I have it on a mocha pot. I like it with a dash of milk, right? So this is how I grew up. I've got a Turkish background. My parents drank Turkish coffee. I'm not saying this tastes like Turkish coffee, but that's how I drank my coffee. I like a little bit of...
That's hardcore.
A little bit of...
Turkish coffee is a hardcore.
Yeah, that should be like a Class A drug, Turkish coffee. You have one of those and you don't sleep for 3 days. But I like it. I've consumed all of it. I think I've had a couple of batches. So that box you've just shown us, I think that arrived with 4 different types of coffees, or at least 4 bags of coffee in there. So that all went. I have it in mocha pot, really easy to make, and it goes deliciously well with a dash of milk as well. So if that's how you like your coffee, I can absolutely 100% recommend that you hop online and order a bag for yourself.
Thank you for the plug.
Lina, anything else you want to mention before we go?
I do want to say, because I'm not sure like how your audience, like if your audience is inclined to visiting, inclined to considering El Salvador. Katie, who I mentioned earlier, she does the Plan B passports, right? She considers El Salvador like a Plan B for people who like, I forgot what she called it, but basically passport arbitrage, right? Not like you secure yourself with as many passports as possible in case shit hits the fan. She considers it a Plan B. For me, it's a Plan A. Like for me, it's a all in kind of thing. And I know that I'm extreme on that front. And I do hear from people sometimes that, it's easy for you if you have access to the government or whatever. If you don't have that, then, maybe it's not as nice in El Salvador. And I do want to say that before I came here, I texted Stacy. I just DM'd her on Twitter and I told her, hey, I'm interested in coming. How can I help? And that was how I got the school book project. It wasn't because of any connections or whatever. It was because I thought, hey, I want to go there. I want to do something. And now I also know because people DM me and say, hey, I want to come to El Salvador. How can I do something? And then I will connect them with the Bitcoin office, for example, or with whoever is in charge. And they will help them. The openness here, and this is one of the reasons why it is so easy to build stuff here. The openness to people who come, because the understanding of how rare it is that people like hardworking, talented people come and want to do something. They understand this, so they embrace that. The ease with which you have access to whatever you need does not depend on your connections. And the Salvadorans always say it's a small country, like with 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation, you can reach almost anybody. So this is something that is, I think that's something that's good to keep in mind, that you can do just about anything so long as your values align with Salvadoran values. I think El Salvador is very conscious of its values. They will not let foreign, no, I want to say foreign, but misaligned values.
Predatory.
Predatory.
Exploitative.
Yeah, there you go. Things distort their values, and I think this is very important. So that would be the only other thing that I would want to say. So one is that you can do. Stacey always says you can't just do things, because it's true. The other thing is that you want to come here if you have that drive, and if you are respectful of this country. It's kind of becoming. I've been traveling for a decade, and I never thought, like, if I go to a country, the country owes me anything. It's actually the other way around. Me as a migrant, someone as an expat who who comes there as a foreigner, I have to work harder than the locals to earn my spot, because I'm not guaranteed a spot. I'm guaranteed a spot in Germany. Germany has to accept me if I go back there. El Salvador doesn't have to accept me. In El Salvador, I'm a guest. I'm a visitor, and I have to earn my place. But if you do that, then you get rewarded with it here. So I think that is it's just a country that's run with common sense. And you don't have that in many places. There are countries with common sense, but this is a country with common sense and growth potential.
Lina, we do need to go. It's been a lovely pleasure of mine to finally meet you and actually speak. You're one of those people online that I kind of feel like I know, but I actually don't know at all. We've never really spoken. We've not really had all that much to do with each other, but I feel like I know you somehow.
Yeah, I feel like you've been around forever. Like you're always there, but we never much. We have a little, but you know.
It's been a pleasure. So if you're ever in London, pop by and say hello, and I would love to have a chat with you anytime.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're ever in El Salvador, pop by, say hello. I'll take you to pupusas, volcanoes, coffee. Yeah.
Agreed. Pupusas and coffee.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lina. Cheers.